What's going on, Soul Tribe? I salute the divinity in you, and welcome to my channel, Alchemist. Justin here, and are you ready to set some intentions this week? This is a kind of an interesting blend of energy. We have these conversations that are happening with the malefics, which normally it's like meh, but they're harmonious aspects, more easier aspects that are going to be happening with them. So this could be where it's like we may be under a little bit of work, maybe feeling frustration with Mars, feeling some hindrances with Saturn, but we can work constructively through them and then create some opportunities, create some flow. So we'll get into that in a moment. But also, Mercury is going to be very active. Mercury is going to be moving into a new sign, but also Mercury is going to be entering into its retrograde shadow period. So we're going to want to keep eyes on what themes may be coming up over this period of time, because Mercury will be backtracking over this. But again, we'll get into all that here in a moment. But if you're new here, again, my name is Justin. And one of the things that I do on this channel is talk about the celestial news weekly, the chit chat that goes on up in the sky. And I'm going to be covering the week of June 26th through July 2nd, 2025. And let's get into this thing. It's fun that it's almost in July. It's like birthday week's coming up. Just a little sidebar. But let's go ahead and get into these first energies here. I got a nice handy dandy chart for you here. But on a Jupiter day, starting off the week, the 26th, we have a couple of things that are going on this day, a little bit of a busy day. The first thing that I want to talk about here is the sun is going to be forming a sextile with Mars. And this is happening at 5 degrees and 13 minutes. And Mars is in Virgo, the sun is in Cancer. And it's happening at 7:11 a.m. and that's going to be Pacific time. Now, when you're thinking about the sextile energy, this is when the planets are 60 degrees apart here. So if you see my cursor, you got the sun here that's in Cancer. This is one I have it set for the Mercury and Leo, so the sun's moved a little bit ahead. But you got that the sun in Cancer here, got Mars in Virgo. So you see the planets are they're both in receptive signs or yin energies. So the sextiles can create these small but impactful opportunities, whether it be for creative sort of like problem solving, or this could be any sort of like collaborations, any sort of growth that you're wanting to. The sextiles can make that happen, can create those opportunities, but because they're a softer aspect, you have to take more initiative to get those things happen. It's one thing, like let's say if, for example, someone presents you with a job opportunity or presents you with a meetup for someone, that's a great thing that the sextile can do, but if you don't take it, then the opportunity can just pass you by, or if you do, then who knows where that may lead you. So it's, where they may be a softer aspect, maybe not as free flowing as maybe the trine, which we'll talk about next, but there's still ones that you want to take advantage of. Because when you think about the sun and Mars in a conversation, the sun is going to be that connection with the higher mind, the light of the energy, that's the soul of the body. How we connect to those sort of divine forces, that innate calling in life, that the true will is what you think the sun representing. And then Mars being the lesser malefic. Mars can sometimes bring up maybe some frustrations, anger, aggression. It's a hot, cutting, dry energy, that when we're dealing with Mars sometimes as a lesser malefic, but in a constructive way where we may have these challenges. Mars invites us to face our fears, to bring courage, to speak our mind. So this could be, let's say, for example, with this chart, an opportunity here, that Mars going through, say if you have a Virgo rising, Mars is going through that first house. So maybe you're thinking about, maybe the ways that you've been utilizing your energy. Maybe you've been wanting to take care of your health better, so that in turn kind of may inspire you with that sun in the 11th house. Maybe you think about, see how you feel about maybe maybe you want to join like a spin class possibly, or maybe you want to start join like a runners group. Maybe there's something in the community that's going on there. But that could be one way that can not only bring about good health, but it could even present some friendships. And again, who knows where that may even lead. Or maybe you're thinking about wanting to start up some new projects here. It's like what let's say if you have like a knitting company that you're starting, who's your audience? Where can you go to find people who want to have your crocheted or knitted hats or shirts or whatever it is that you're creating? That's what the sextiles can bring, and that's more kind of on a specific level. But on a general level, if this sun in Cancer, I would think if it's been bringing up any sort of like emotions, I'm thinking with Mars as far as like maybe there's from some frustrations around your workspace, or maybe there's some frustrations around relationships, around the home, around your spirituality, whatever, that money. This can be a time where, okay, if you've been reactive, with all this Cancer energy that maybe you're feeling, this could find a way of like, okay, maybe I need to have maybe a tougher conversation. Let's say there's something going on with a partner, family member, business partner, lover. But this could be where it's like, instead of blowing up, I'm going to come at this, that Virgo energy, be more constructive with it. I'm going to channel this frustrations, and it's like, okay, how can I accurately and effectively convey these emotions maybe that I'm feeling? Or, I like to think that this too, because sometimes I think with water energy in Cancer, when we get whipped up into the emotions, sometimes it could just be really overwhelming, but then once it passes, we don't do anything with it. And I think that, and I remember hearing something that this guy called it like this wasted emotions. And as a Cancer sun, at first I felt some type of way about it, but I got what he was, where he was getting at, because I think that emotions aren't just meant to be something that just drives us and makes us irrational. If we're feeling something, the more that we get familiar with that, the more we know how to work with these things. We understand what these symbols signify. So this can be a really great time, again, to just see where maybe there have been some things that have been kind of stirring up, and how to effectively use the emotions to accomplish things. Really take that cardinal force that is Cancer, and make something, make something beautiful with that, as opposed to maybe whipping up destructions and, and maybe just like cutting things, cutting off people, or, being aggressive and things like that, impatient, whatever that Mars and Virgo might be doing there. So just some things to kind of pay attention to there as you're working with this energy there. But otherwise, I feel like this one is a pretty light transit, so just something to pay attention to. Now let's talk about the next one, because Mercury is going to be entering into Leo at about 12:10 p.m. and again, that's Pacific time. Now with Mercury entering Leo here, as you can see on this chart, now Mercury is under the rulership of the Sun, and this is one where we're really going to want to get, again, on a general level, just very familiar with how you feel about and what you think about Leo energy. But also just on a more specific level, this would be a great time to see where Leo falls, whether what house or houses, depending on what house system you use, that you have Leo. Because Mercury, the thoughts are going to be hanging around here, lingering here for quite a while. And we're going to talk about that retrograde here in a minute, but Mercury is going to stay in Leo from the 26th and won't actually exit Leo until about the second. I think it's the second of. Let me get my fingers out. Yeah, the 2nd of September. So we got about a little over 2 months of just Leo energy. And Leo is, like I said, they're ruled by the Sun, and they are the fixed fire sign, and they're active or yang in nature. And one really cool thing I think about Mercury and Leo, and I have this natally, Mercury in Leo can be a very active mind, a very lively mind, especially when that Leo, I find when Leo is in its craft, when it's in its calling, when we were talking about that divine will, that true will of the Sun, when you're doing things that just feel in alignment, that Mercury in Leo will put all the mental energy into it. So this would be just, again, in a general space, this would be a great time at looking at how the things that you're doing fuel you. What do you think about this? The activities that you're doing, how do you feel about the amount of movement that you're maybe getting in the body? How do you feel about the maybe the foods that you're eating? How do you feel about how you're spending your money? How do you feel about how you're spending your time? Do your relationships fuel you up? That can be some really great things, because again, when that Mercury in Leo, I think is like really feeling lively, it just shines bright. And I think that this can bring a bit of more force to the because Mercury rules communications and things, but I think that this can be one where we can have inspired discourse, one where we can, just any sort of collaborative work, especially considering that we started off with that sextile with Mars. This could be a really great, great time for that, thinking about like, okay, you got that, you thought about, okay, this is what I want to do with that aspect. Maybe I could put myself more out there, maybe join different groups or look for different benefactors for my thing. And now Mercury's like, yes. Mercury's going to give a big old yes. And so yeah, really work with that. I think Mercury and Leo can be one that is, again, very lively, very strong. And you're going to want to look too, because considering Mercury is going to be here for a long time, if you have any prominent fixed placements, this is one where this Mercury may be working more actively with you over these next couple of months. And that's going to be if you have any like planets or points in Taurus, if you have anything in Aquarius, if you have anything in Scorpio, and if you have anything in Leo. Those are going to be the ones where you really feel and maybe notice this Mercury energy the most. So see again what planets this is activating and how that may be resonating with you. But I also think too, one thing to be mindful of, I think that when we're talking about fixed energy, Taurus tends to get a lot of the flack as far as like being the most stubborn. But I'd argue that we don't even need to get into it, because if we get in a fixed sign fight, that would take forever. But all of the fixed signs have a propensity for stubbornness. Leo just happens to be more hot and dramatic about it. So that would be something I would be mindful of, especially maybe if you have, like a day chart, maybe you have a little tricky relationship with Mars. I'd be mindful about starting up any sort of like arguments and, picking and choosing your battles with Leo. Because that Mercury in Leo, I would say, and again, as a one who has Mercury in Leo natively, it can be a very proud placement. It doesn't like to look like it doesn't know what it's talking about. Like it likes to feel like it's, that people look up to it, that people respect the mind and things. So this could be where maybe if your authority is feeling challenged in any way, that Mercury Leo could come in hot, and it has like, again, it has stamina. So I'd just be mindful about any sort of like long-term sort of like instigations and things like that. But otherwise, I think this could be a very, very, very beneficial placement here. Now, let's get into the next transit, because on a Venus day, the 27th of June, our next aspect is going to be, so we got Mercury in the mix, but this is going to be forming a trine with Saturn. And this is happening at 1 degree and 44 minutes. Again, Mercury's in Leo and Saturn is in Aries, and this is happening at 8:52 p.m. Now, when you think about the trines, these are considered the most beneficial aspects. This is where things just come with just little effort. This is just blessings, ease, good flow here. And I feel like especially with Saturn, who's the greater malefic, we want to have some good flow with Saturn. And this could be honestly on just a general level. This could be just understanding what this Saturn in Pisces, what this Saturn in Aries energy is bringing for you. We've had this energy for a little while. And interestingly enough, Saturn and Mercury are going to be stationing retrograde within about, let me see here, let me get my ephemeris out really quick. Yeah, they're going to be stationing within about five days of each other. So this, I think, would be a great time, just to reflect on, now that we've been in this Saturn energy, and again, maybe it's been just like a couple of months, but now we're starting to get a flow for the pace of Saturn in Aries, that we can get things accomplished, but it's just going to maybe require something that we can't rush, and something that's really going to maybe test our will in a sense. Because I think that Saturn in a fire sign, even when it's in its like depression of Aries, I think that it can still be one that you can rise, you can work through these challenges to get something accomplished. But again, I think that this Mercury is it's understanding the work of Saturn. So let's say, for example, if you have like a school that you're going through, this could be where it's like, okay, you may have like 4 or 5 years of schooling that you may be to do in order to get your thing that you want to accomplish. And that kind of stinks. You want to get started. You want to start making money. You want to start getting this career going. But this Mercury here is like, okay, you know what, since I have this time, let me go ahead and let me make the most of this. Let me go ahead and maybe I'm thinking about some mentors that I want to do. Maybe there are some ways that I can expedite these classes, maybe take some additional workload, kind of test, kind of gauge what my capacity is. Let's look at this chart, for example. With this, you've got Capricorn rising, got Saturn going through the fourth house. Now Mercury's entering the eighth house. This could be maybe you're thinking about, you maybe want to invest in a home. Maybe maybe you're getting ready to move in with someone. Now you're thinking about how is that going to look. One, of course, the moving process, maybe in general, but then how do we integrate both of our personalities and things into this new space that we're doing, that we're getting. So that could be something that comes up. Or maybe this could be where you're just thinking about wanting to invest in a home, possibly whether it be buy your own home, maybe build your own home, whatever this is. And now that Mercury is like, okay, what this is the maybe sort of assistance that I can get from this. Maybe I can get some sort of loans and things, start thinking along the terms of that. So that could be how this trine could activate and again could present some ease. Present some ease, present some flow. I think with it going back, eventually going retrograde, I think that there may be, of course, some things that might need to be looked over there. But overall, I could see it as, where the hindrances of Saturn may come through, there's something they're surmountable challenges in a sense. So, this is one of those times. It's like, don't let the malefic scare you. This could be where we're really working constructively with them. So just some things to think about there. Now let's get into this last energy here, because we have Mercury that's going to be entering into its retrograde shadow. Now this is going to start at 4 degrees and 14 minutes of Leo. And then the retrograde is going to happen at 15 degrees and 34 minutes of Leo. And the retrograde specifically starts at about 10:54 p.m. And this would be the time to start paying attention to, especially when we're talking about mercurial themes. So any sort of like maybe conversations that are had, maybe any sort of like studying that's going on, whatever that might be that might look like. Pay attention to what themes come up, especially in that house. Because those are the themes that are going to, when we're getting into retrogrades, this is where we may need to revisit some things, possibly here. Now the retrograde shadow is going to last about 17 days. So yeah, definitely document, what are, especially any sort of bigger things that may happen during this period of time here. Because let's say, for example, this could be where, this Mercury is just entered for this Aquarius rising. Mercury's entered into your 7th house, your house of relationships. So this could be where maybe you start, it could be something as simple as maybe start dating someone possibly, or maybe you start, maybe you get in a partnership as far as like a business partnership. Maybe there's a certain conversation that you have with someone, a real sort of pivotal thing. Pay attention to that, because there may be something in the relationship things that may come up back for you later. Maybe you start up a business partnership, but then maybe something where schedules start to conflict, or maybe we need to revise some things. It doesn't have to be where the world ends, when we're thinking about retrogrades, but it is just being aware of where we may need to do some review. You do some kind of analyze what's maybe going on in these themes and how to better tackle them. So that might be, whatever starts up during this period, just keep an open mind that, maybe we may have to reduce some things. Maybe you're looking for, you maybe found like a therapist, for example, but then the schedules can't seem to line up, or maybe something strange happens. So now we may have to look for another thing, or, maybe whatever. Again, I'm just throwing out just random scenarios here, but apply it to your situation, but definitely kind of keep an eye on what is coming up. And I can actually go ahead and switch back over. But yeah, definitely just kind of keep an eye on just what themes come up over this period of time, because this can help you work with the retrogrades more, I think more constructively, more proactively. Because again, if you know that things are going to be kind of coming up around this house, you don't just get whipped up into, I think, just like the general retrograde frenzy. You know what I mean? And that's not to say that there aren't certain Mercury retrogrades, retrograde things that aren't true, where we're talking about maybe communication gets a little wonky. Especially, for me, this is going to be going through my first house, so there's that. But that may be something where I might take a course. maybe learn how to slow my cadence down a little bit, slow my pace of speaking down. But and that might be something, just going back to the Aquarius. Maybe you're analyzing how you've been coming across in your relationships. That could be something where you're seeing where maybe things have been, maybe the relationships have been the conversations have been a little bit more fiery. Maybe you've been a little more kind of fixed on your ways, considering you have that kind of fixed sign as a rising. But just look at your house, look at your chart, pay attention to these themes, and I find that you can move through retrograde smoothly. Again, trickiness will potentially happen. At least it's something that you've mentally prepared for, and that's to be forearmed. Forewarned is to be forearmed. So that's a little something there for you. But I think that's all I got for you there on these transits, and if that's something where, if you want to work more personally with these, see how these themes may be coming up with your chart. Maybe, and I would pay attention to this as well, especially if you are coming up, let's say, like if you're like myself, maybe you're coming up on right as I'm getting ready to start a new annual perfection year, and Mercury is going to be my time lord for the year. And about a week later, Mercury is going to be going retrograde. So those Mercury retrograde themes, and I have a lot of placements in Leo. They're just going to be activating at least two points and five and three planets. So it's going to be a busy one for me. So that could be where, if you're coming up on like a Mercury perfection year, that could be something you may definitely want to get eyes on for this retrogrades that are going to maybe fall place under these years. Those could be really kind of highlighted points for you. And if that's something that you want to get eyes on, want to work with, see what are some dates and things that you may need to pay attention to. Down in the description box is a link for my email if you have any questions about the services that I provide. But I have the pricing for my service, and we go over a number of things, as far as like, we can go over the natal chart, go over any sort of like impactful transits, and what are some auspicious days to kind of look forward to, however you want to work with this. And again, if you have any questions about that, my email is down in the description box. It's down there in the description box. So, and then last couple of things, if you want to work with the lunar shenanigans, kind of see how when we have these sort of quiet, because there's not a lot that's going on this week. It's going to be more sort of lunar transits that are going to be kind of taking place behind the scenes as this energy is kind of building up. So if you want to see how the moon is going to be impact us both generally and more specifically, I have a playlist called the Lunar Shenanigans. And it goes into the lunar astrology, what sign the moon's in, when it hits major lunations, and the different aspects and what the general energies are kind of looking like there. So definitely check that out. And then I also have these series where I'm doing different celestial bodies in different signs in different houses, and just like my thoughts on them and how to maybe some themes that may come up with those placements. So. And if that's so that's all. They're all a nice playlist there for you. And if you have any videos that you want to request, definitely let me know. Comment in the section, and I have a queue. I have a queue, and I'm just going through the videos as I go through. Otherwise, I have 12-sided dice, and I just roll them, and they the angel lets me know what video I'm doing. But yeah, that's all I got for you there. So until next time, stay mindful out there. Keep raising that vibration through the roof. And I will catch you on the next one. Mercury Day.